Okay. Hello, everybody. This is the sequester lifecycle kubeadm office hours of the 23rd of January 2019. We don't have any sick chairs, but we have some agenda items to discuss today. Please add your names to the list of attendees and add your agenda items if you have any. Fabrizio, you have the first item.
Yes, hello everybody. So the first item regards some discussion and some issue. Some discussion is like some issue on the kubeadm repository about what is supported, what is officially supported by kubeadm and what is not, with regards to the cluster variant that you can achieve using phases. And in my opinion, now that there is also the skip phases flag, users are starting using it. And but in my opinion, when you start using phases, you are going out from what it is officially supported. Basically, you are composing your own cluster, and you don't get and you are not sure that join and upgrade will work. And this happened, for instance, for user trying to skip the installation of kubeproxy, and then they faced the problem in join, control plane, and in upgrades. So my point here is that if we want to make more clear to the user what are the cluster variants officially supported, which is the first point. And second point is, if do we want to increase the number of cluster variants that are supported, especially with regard to the case of installing a cluster without kubeproxy, because there is out there other tool like kuberouter that can replace it. I don't know if there are opinions with regard to this.
When you say officially supported cluster variants, could you give an example of some?
Yes, of course. For instance, we have, for me, a clusters variant is a cluster that use an external etcd, or a cluster that use kubeDNS instead of core DNS. Those are two clusters variants which are fully supported by kubeadm, because we check now manually, but in future I hope with CI/CD, we check at every release that all the kubeadm workflow works for this variant. Mm-hmm. But it is not feasible to do this for all the possible combination of phases or whatever. So in my opinion, phases leads you to something that is not a supported variant.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I would say that it sounds like we do have variants of clusters that we do officially support. It would always be good to document that and make that explicit. And then adding some kind of warning, like to phases, at least letting people know that they may create a cluster, some sort of Franken cluster that we don't support. Would definitely be a good thing to do.
So the question is about not using kubeproxy and going with something like, I don't know, maybe CAPS integration. Is that on the agenda?
It is not in agenda now, but the question is that, okay, we more or less we discussed now that if you use phases, you are not you are going out from the official support or from the safe path. And the next question is that, okay, do we want to have a new clusters variant that is a cluster without kubeproxy? That's a question. If there is consensus, it's something that we have to look for volunteers and to plan for it.
Yeah, it's something very wide. I mean, but I think that integration part is a good thing, because why maintain many things if you can just integrate with something that works? Let's take maybe Chaos as an example, but this is just one of many examples I think out there in the list. So, but I think it's a good idea.
So the biggest problem is, of course, upgrades. We already support upgrade paths for kubeDNS to kubeDNS and CoreDNS to CoreDNS, and our upgrade process for external etcd is maybe manual, like mostly manual, but for the case without kubeproxy, we need to handle this scenario without kubeproxy. And how are we going to upgrade safely if the user is using like kuberouter? Is it even going to work? We have
to. That's a good question. Yeah.
No, I don't see a problem in that, because if the user, so there are things that are in charge of kubeadmin, and there are things that are managed by the user. So if the user decides to do the cluster without kubeproxy, then the proxy solution the user will install is up to him. So it goes out from the scope of kubeadmin. It's up to the user install kuberouter and upgrade kuberouter. So I'm not worried about what goes out from the scope. I only want to make sure that whenever a user comes to open an issue and says, "Hey guys, I have created a cluster skipping one phase, and now upgrade does not work."
Yeah. So for me, for bits, I would say, yeah, if a user don't use phases or he has his own workflow, then yeah, it's in experimental mode. So I agree that at some point we need to maintain a specific workflow. Because, yeah, I see the point. Then we go out of scope with maintaining too much stuff coming in, and then we don't do a central. So
yeah, that's a good point too, because having straightforward way to update core or kubeDNS, and yeah, that's something.
Okay, I take the point that we should somehow make it clear to the user what is supported and when the user are on their own, and I will check both documentation and also the kubeadmin init or phases output.
Who's maintaining the kuberouter project? Is that something separate and it's in the vendor as a package, or?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it is.
Yeah, I just started reading about
under the SIG Kubernetes SIG network. I don't know.
Okay, because I see a few projects integrating with it, so maybe that's a good natural step to go towards something more abstract or common. I don't know. Just a thought. But yeah, I just found this kuberouter project and Cloud Native Labs. I don't know.
So it's interesting if we support if we support such a custom cluster where the user skipped proxy from init. On upgrades, we also need to support, I guess, upgrade phases to skip installing automatically the add-on on upgrades. Is that true? I think yes.
Yes, but okay. I think that what we are saying is that it makes sense to support this scenario, but from saying that and from finding someone that does this, implement these, and figure out all the detail, we need some volunteers. I think that for this cycle, there is no room unless someone wants to take this
Definitely.
item to solve. I will open an issue. I will simply open an issue and say, okay, guys, there are requests about this. Someone should take the issue. Help wanted.
Yeah, maybe we can reuse the old one. So let's just rename the title. I mean, yes. It's your choice. My question is, where should we document it? Because I'm kind of confused which page in the docs we should use for stuff like that. Like,
I have to check.
Yeah, I have no idea. Probably somewhere in kubeadm init. There is a paragraph about phases. We should probably mention there, like a caution paragraph. Hey, if you use custom phases, you are on your own in terms of this custom cluster, and upgrades are not going to work. For now.
Yes, this is at least this should be done. I will check where is the best place to do it.
Okay, I can help with the docs PR as well.
Where is this request coming from?
Basically, a user posted an issue like a month ago saying that, hey, I skipped the kubeproxy phase, and I customized my cluster with a kube router. But then when I do upgrade force kubeproxy on me.
Can someone link to that issue in the notes?
Isn't it already there?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Can see it.
No.
I can see it.
No, I will search for the issue. There were also some discussion in Slack, and there were also other users telling that they were using their own custom proxy solution. So.
Oh, actually, it was about not being able to join a node.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, you if you skip the phase. Yes, but I'm quite convinced that now we will fix the join part during the rework of phases. The problem there is that we are reusing we are reading the full init configuration, and this implies also read all the component config.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not necessary in when doing join.
Yeah, we probably after the phases are done, we can send a PR to fix this, to basically remove fetching the component configs, only the custom configuration.
So join will be an easy fix, update is less easier. Okay, so I think that now it is clear. I will update.
You are on mute, Fabrizio.
Can I move to the next point? Okay, so the next point is about cert renewal, and there is a set of issues that are popping out about how to do cert renewal, cert rotation, how cert are linked, and so on. Cert is really a complex topic, and we already did some work in trying to make the documentation better, but it seems that this is not enough. So I want only to add a PSA if someone has knows the topic well or wants to deep dive this topic, it will be welcome.
So Liz is an expert in this. I also saw, who was it? Rafael from SUSE also is poking the cert. I personally do not consider myself any type of expert in certs. My question there was like, we already have a document that, I mean, it's not super detailed, but but it already contains some guidelines how to renew certificates and stuff like that with kubeadm. Do you see users complaining about this document?
No, but the user really find it difficult. Find it difficult the process. Then I saw this family of issue increment, and I added this to the meeting to the minute. That's all. I didn't have at the time to dig into the problem.
Yes, again, this is one of those things that they are very important, but we, like you and me and the others, we have like different priorities this cycle. And unless someone decides to help us, I don't see how we can fix them, because the release is going to be late March, I think, and like cold freeze is going to be like 3 weeks before that or something like that. So yeah, we need help for these. That's my opinion.
Do we have any issues for improving the documentation? Open like, or do we have our only issues that state the problem? Maybe we just open an issue help wanted and somebody pop up, or if somebody has time can pick it up.
I linked in the document 2 issue with regard to these. I guess they are already tagged help wanted. I will check it again. I'm adding the tag now.
Sorry, I might have missed a piece of that. So the documentation is not an issue. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. That's fine.
Because the user are filing issue with regard to this topic, and I'm not sure if the issue are because this area of kubeadm is buggy, or because the user don't understand how to go on.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. We should at least link them to the documentation and the issues and see if that helps any. But
so the particular problem from Angus Lee, the first issue, I think that's more of I haven't seen this before, so I'm going to consider it as being a special case. I mean, that's how I see it. But we probably shouldn't spend time now and just add the help wanted labels. I mean, that's my opinion. Actually, the help wanted label is already there. So, Chuck, do you know if Liz is going to be back to kubeadm like this cycle or something like that?
Probably not. I think she's got her hands full with other projects.
Okay. Well, yeah. So this is an announcement. If somebody wants to look at these 2 issues, help is appreciated. I personally, I quickly read this particular issue. I cannot understand exactly what the problem is. So, Fabrizio, do you want to move to the next item?
Okay, so next item, I started to trim down the backlog, and today I unblocked the PR from Ross about the detection of the CRI, and I think that this group is merging right now, and I want just raise a PSA because we don't have good coverage on CRI different than Docker. So if someone is using other CRI in their daily work and they can check the automatic detection, it will be great.
And check the what? I'm sorry.
One.
What do you want to check?
This
because
PR,
we've been using Container D in Cluster API.
Oh, great! So this PR implements the automatic detection of the CRI. So you don't have to specify the CRI if you have only one installed.
Okay, so we are using also another, so we can also check.
Great.
Especially cryo folks should try this out, because I only tested it with Docker and Containerd.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, we're using Containerd.
So I had a silly question, because I'm not exactly an expert in Linux sockets. Is it possible that the user modifies the socket in such a way that we no longer be able to detect this? Like, this is a question for us, I guess. Do you see potential for failure points for our detection?
Only if somebody actually sets up a Unix socket. So we actually detect that one, and not, for example, the real one. So you may actually have set up the socket for Containerd and not have an actual Containerd.
Understood. Yeah. Or is it possible that after using Containerd and then uninstalling it, the socket could remain present on the distro, and could that create a problem? Like, you might end up with multiple sockets, and like you say, Containerd might not be present, but the socket is there.
I can verify that Docker and Containerd actually don't leave their sockets in there.
Yeah, that's pretty good, because otherwise, I mean, it creates a complete mess of sockets. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you. I was going to ask you earlier the same thing when we met internally, but yeah, that was my only question about this PR. I think it's pretty good, and I guess we can move to the next item.
Okay, then there are some old PR which are out there since time that it will be great to discuss together and see if we can reach an agreement and close them. Maybe I don't know if there are more important item in agenda, and if there are more important items in agenda, we do these at the end of the meeting.
So is this about the search logic of kubeconfig? I guess we can talk about this one here. The problem is that we should have had Tim and Lucas on this one. But yeah, we can talk about this one if you want to. I can also talk about it because I think I sent the PR. Whatever you say.
Okay, so I give a brief introduction. So one or two cycles ago, I guess 2 cycles ago, we introduced this logic that makes kubeadmin search for the kubeconfig in a similar way, that more similar way than kubectl. So first look for environment variables, then from in the home, and finally it looks at where the kubeadmin expect the admin.conf should be. The problem that I see in this approach, that was already abandoned last cycle for init, but still exists on the other on the other command, and the issue is related to reset. Is that kubeadmin is a tool that is meant to manage the node where you are. Second, kubeadmin is a tool that manages 2 types of configuration. Some configuration which are local to the machine, like the manifest or the cert, and some configuration which are in the cluster. So I see, in my opinion, all the action that manage both type of configuration, so local and cluster, should not rely on the kubeconfig search logic, but should rely only on the admin.conf that is in a well-known place. Otherwise, for instance, I have a machine, I've installed Minikube, I run reset. What happened? Or I run a phase. What happened? That the phase write the manifest locally and then create the RBAC rules or the config map in some other cluster. So I see it very risky, and there was I remember also an issue talking about this. If we make a kubeadmin searching for kubeconfig path, there is the risk that kubeadmin makes action on place where are not under our control.
So the precedence you are suggesting is to search in the default location for kubeadm first, then do environment variables, and finally do the home path. Is it like so?
I think that for some command kubeadmin should not search. Should use the admin.conf in the under etcd.
Okay, I need to look at the diff of this PR quickly. I think it only this doesn't affect phases. I think. Yeah.
It affects reset.
Are you sure it affects phases? I don't think it does.
No, it affects. This PR is only for reset.
No, it's not only for reset. I think it's also for a bunch of other commands like token. I think.
For instance, for token we can discuss. Token does not touch any local artifact. So it could be that you want to use token on another machine. So you run kubeadmin token on another machine and you control a cluster. This makes sense. But for kubeadmin init, join, and reset, in my opinion, it does not make sense. It is a risk.
Yes, I see your point. Yeah, we should definitely present this in front of team as well. I think I agree with you because these are node local commands. They are not about like controlling an external cluster somewhere. And yes, I think that init, join, and reset should be without this precedence of the environment variable.
Also upgrade.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to block on a team and Lucas probably on this because like they should give the final call. But yeah, definitely. For the rest of the commands, however, like this PR is touching the rest of the commands. Possibly reset as well. Is that correct?
I have to check it. It is a longest than the PR. So
I think this is touching token for sure. But the question for token is like, should we like possibly search environment variables first? And like most of the people are suggesting, and then we can search like the default path or the home path. Like
I think that for token it is fine to do the same that kubectl. Okay.
So I guess we have to go back to this and figure out what we are doing with the node local commands, because I agree with you. We shouldn't probably use environment variables by default as first precedence because it creates a mess. Yeah. But this again, this also applies to kubectl in general. Like I've seen reports from people like messing up with kubectl because kubectl by default searches environment variables, and they forgot to set it to the new cluster they created, and it basically applies stuff to the old cluster. So that's like it's messy. It's messy. It cannot be like super dangerous, but it can be very messy.
It can also be confusing if different kubeadm commands have different kubeconfig resolution paths. And it's also confusing too, because when we do a kubeadm init, we tell the user to set the environment variable, which to me says you want to use that as a higher precedence.
But we also have the phases. The phases support the kubeconfig flag, so that's the problem. And phases are part of init.
If I may respond to Chuck, I agree. It could be confusing having two different approach. So it's something that we should consider, but I don't think that it is a problem. At the end of kubeadmin init, we tell the user, if you want to use kubectl, copy the config file. But it is for using kubectl, not for using kubeadmin again.
I see. Yep.
So I think that also touches the kubeproxy versus not kubeproxy thing, right? If you want, let's say, to skip phases.
It's not exactly directly related, because when you want to skip the kubeproxy phase, I don't think you have to provide the kubeconfig file.
Okay. Okay.
Tim, we were talking about like the precedence of kubeconfig files, where we fetch them. Like this is an outstanding issue for.
Yeah, I read it last night. It was we should do whatever kube control does, but then there's we don't actually do that currently, and it could break something. Is that the problem statement?
The problem is that I think that some command in kubeadmin, init, join, and upgrade, they are meant to manage your node, and so the node where you are working on. And if a kubeconfig can kick in some way, you risk to screw up another cluster. So, in my opinion, for all the command that has some impact on the local machine, we should not have we should not use the same logic used by kubectl.
That kind of makes sense, because you're actually generating kube configs versus consuming them. Yeah, I agree with that.
Instead, for other command like upload config, like token, those commands are utility, and it could make sense to have them act in the same way of kubectl, because you can use also on different machines that in the node are part of your cluster. So it makes sense, but we were discussing this now with Chuck. It's kind of confusing having kubeadmin using two logics.
Well, I think the only thing isn't the only one that it's really different on init. Is it really different on join? I think it's only init. That's the special case.
Unfortunately, we implemented the precedence, I guess, almost everywhere, and but we removed it from init last cycle. So yes. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that now we have this precedence in all the command except init.
Then that seems, that seems right. What's wrong with having the standard precedence order for everything but init? That sounds correct.
Fabrizio is saying that we should like have this precedence order for init, join, and reset, the node-specific commands, basically. And Fabrizio is saying that we should search in the default kubeadm path first, and then search environment variables. And for the rest of the commands, we already have this precedence that is, it's actually broken at the moment, but I think that to be honest, I think we should not follow, like maybe we shouldn't follow kubectl, and we should define our own search precedence.
Well, I think it depends upon, like what Fabrizio was saying, the user experience for different operations. Like if a person using the token subcommand independently, like using standard precedence order of kube control makes perfect sense, because you'd expect that behavior because you're acting on an existing cluster. I think it's totally dependent upon whether you're acting on a cluster or whether or not you're creating a new cluster.
Yes. I guess we can look at this PR again and define what the precedence should be, but please mind that this precedence that the PR touches is for everything except init join and possibly reset. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think there's the rule that I just set up arbitrarily in my head actually makes sense. Is that if you're acting on an existing cluster, then you should follow default precedence order. If you're creating a cluster in any way, shape, or form, you should follow the order that Fabrizio had mentioned earlier.
But team, reset or upgrade, in which category are falling?
You're not generating on upgrade, and you're not generating on reset. So I wouldn't see why you wouldn't do default kube control precedence order for those two.
Because imagine that I do upgrade,
Yep.
and I have a kubeconfig somewhere. I will write the manifest on my machine and change the rollback rules and the config map on another cluster, which could be not the one linked to the machine where I am.
Well, that's a user story. That's not common case, right? Like it's kind of like saying if you're walking around with a shotgun in your pocket and you blast your own foot off, whose fault is it? When a person sits down to do a reset or an upgrade, they should know the environment that they're setting up in. And if they're trying to do it remotely, they should specify the command line overrides for that specific environment if they need to, right? Otherwise, if it's local environment, they should expect the local settings, right?
Yes, but upgrade and reset are always local. They are designed to be local.
May I suggest that like we probably should move the discussion to the ticket again and to move to the rest of the items. What do you guys think? Because we have like
let's write down more details on the issue. I'll go back to it this afternoon.
Okay, thanks. So the next item is something that we cannot do much about, but probably you team can do something. It's about the docs placeholders. They're like blocking us again for the join phases. We have to generate placeholder docs that are somehow useless. Because
didn't you had that PR open forever to remove those things, right?
Yes. So
and install.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So the story there is that at some point, Lava Lamp added something called a link checker for the docs, and the link checker is basically a tool that verifies if the file names have not changed, so that external consumers of the docs can always use these links, that they are stable. The links are always stable. And at some point they stopped using the link checker, and now it's like out of the loop completely. But still, we generate these placeholder documents that are part of the link checker, basically. And the placeholder documents, like according to Aaron and Fabrizio and even the SIG docs people, they are completely useless right now. We just have to convince Lava Lamp, and I don't want to ping him personally about this anymore because he's probably going to think that I'm annoying. But if you or somebody else who knows people, like some of the old scholars in the project, if you guys can get this moving, it's going to be amazing, because it's a completely redundant feature.
who owns that though? Like Lava Lamp doesn't own it anymore. He kind of like.
Well, he's in the owner's file, and also he's the author of this stuff. So I guess he's still the owner. In terms of, I can talk about the actual owners. I mean, there's an owner's file in docs. It's in the root of the docs folder, and it's actually it's not a Lava Lamp is not in there. It's Brandon, Clayton, Tim Hawking, and Philip. So that's the four approvers of the folder.
It just seems like it seems like one of those ownerless efforts. It doesn't seem like there's conflict on what needs to be done. It's just the question of like, is someone going to see it all the way through and make sure that on the change it doesn't break something else weird. I can poke around. That issue's been open forever, like since October, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And the reason we started doing that was because every time we did a PR to change something, we were generating these docs when we did a command line change, and it was just it required someone else who had administrative ACLs to override the approval, so we didn't sort of fall into the trap. There's another way around this too, which is just to give us approval rights on the docs. It's a question of like what's faster.
Yeah.
Like I can streamline that, and we just get through that, and we don't have to deal with it.
So Aaron basically said that he doesn't want to give us access to the docs folder because the docs folder also contains the API reference documentation, and we do not own that. And yeah, that was the argument from Aaron, and he decided that we should go to the next route and figure out like why is this link checker placeholder doc still present there. And I guess it's only a matter of convincing Daniel to stamp this. And
okay.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, I'll go poke Daniel. Him and I have a fun relationship.
Doesn't sound that good. All right. All right. Quickly, we have another last one, and I don't think we can fit this in 10 minutes. But basically, it's about the local DNS cache, and I think we should focus. Like everybody can drop a sentence here. Like, do we want to add this into the next cycle, this cycle, and how should we do it? Should it be part of the config? Should it be like a pivoting function in alpha somewhere? Should it be a feature gate? And yeah.
This is I vaguely recall the problem statement for this. Could you reiterate the core problem statement?
This is driven by Google and the SIG network. They want to add DNS local cache as part of Kubernetes deployments, and I think this is already part of kubeup. So for kubeadm, yeah.
It is, but also changes the core DNS deployment, if I recall correctly.
Maybe I think it does. It does change it, or maybe it doesn't. So the PR that is in flight currently for this pretty much changed our kubeadm config. I think this is not a good idea. I think we should first expose it like in an alpha feature in a way. Possibly.
Do you have the issue? Yeah. Do you have the issue linked in the docs?
Yes, it's in there.
Okay, let me read up on that one.
So something me and Lucas were confused about. We have to use this new container, which is called Kate's DNS node cache, and it's maintained by the same people that maintain kubeDNS. And I started questioning these folks: is if kubeDNS goes away, are they going to continue maintaining this container that we now have to use in parallel with core DNS? So Tim Hawking came by and said, hey, we are going to continue maintaining this container, no worries. Basically, that's what he said. And so we have to have this scenario, like I'm saying, like core DNS plus a kubeDNS container that is specifically for the cache. And that's why I was thinking that we should probably not include it right away in the config of kubeadm as a knop.
I need to root out the core of this issue. I think there are different DNS deployments, because the problem here is like how we used to do things in the past in OpenShift versus how they're currently done in the upstream kubeup implementation versus how they're currently done inside of the kubeadm deployment. The local DNS caching and the local resolution and the resolver were set as daemon sets in the past. And I don't know exactly how folks are doing this currently with the kubeup deployment, so I'd have to take a look there. But it seems weird that this wouldn't be part of a deployment of core DNS, right? Like, you can't do it as inside. This was different inside of OpenShift because we had something called a deployment config, so you could put deployments and a daemon set in one lump together. But the inside of this thing, I don't know how we'd manage it and whether or not we should feature gate it or should it be a default.
So I asked the core DNS folks, like, what is your solution for local DNS cache? And I didn't get a response. But the PR that is in flight implements it as a daemon set currently.
Yeah, I'd expect that.
Mm-hmm. I guess we just have to continue like working on this topic. This is probably completely out of scope for this cycle for us.
Possibly. I wanted to do a quick drop of the status of that packaging conversation.
Yes, please.
So it's just confusion currently. There was, Hannes is working from the release perspective and didn't know that we had like a P0 item to fix packaging in KK. And that's what that main issue is meant to solve. And I don't know if Merrick's on. I know folks from SUSE had decided that they were going to help on that effort. And there were other folks who were also going to help on that. I know that even some ex-Heptio folks were also helping drive some of that conversation. But that is still a P0, and we still should work on and deliver that issue, which is basically building from Bazel builds in KK, Bazel or otherwise, the ability to generate the debs and RPMs, the canonical, what we consider to be canonical versions of those artifacts. So that should still be P0. Folks should still execute as planned against that. The publishing aspect is something that the release team will happily create a new KEP for how we're going to take those artifacts and publish things into a potential stable testing and nightly. And then we're going to have to work with test infra on how to consume those artifacts and when to consume certain pieces of it, because there's a conflation of problems, right? Some of test infra, depending upon where you are and what jobs you're running, will consume the nightly artifacts, and some of them will actually consume the stable artifacts, right? So you'd have to fix all three problems, and they're all separate. Well, the publishing and some of the testing are kind of linked together. The canonical artifact generation, we can fix in KK like today. There's nothing blocking us from doing that, and we should still continue doing that.
So just can you send me the link of the issues on the channel? If if I finished, I can have a look, and then I can also help on that.
Yes, I would happily welcome anyone who wants to work on that particular bit. We can coordinate that effort. I don't think it's that hard technically. I think it's just getting it done.
Yeah. Okay. So I can have a look. I have something to do with the joint phases, but then I think I'm free, so I'm happy to help there.
Sure. I will drop a link in both in the doc and on the channel after.
And that KEP is still relevant.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, kind of. It's weirdly overlapping.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I agreed with a lot of what was going on there, and at least from kubeadm perspective or SIG cluster lifecycle perspective, it looked really good. Some of the words were pretty nebulous, but I think the overall goal was like aligned with where we wanted to go.
Yeah, it's basically putting more verbiage behind what was written inside of the original checklist issue, which is good. I think getting more people on. I think the question of who's doing what was the biggest problem, because this was clearly something that we had articulated we needed to solve, and it's a P0. Folks are lined up to do it. They've poked me many times, and they're already starting. So I think we should get all the right people together and just have at it and fix this problem. With regards to publishing, that's a separate issue that requires, we don't have control over that. So SIG release has to do that work. But in an ideal world, we actually have nightlies stable and testing.
I'm possibly going to help with like testing the artifacts. I have some sort of a plan about this, how to integrate the jobs. But once we get to that point, I can help, I guess. With and I'm going to hopefully receive help from people like Ben and Sen from Google.
Cool. Yeah, fixing test infra requires a special type of knowledge that is only learned through epic amounts of pain and suffering.
A lot of asking a lot of questions and to the borderline being annoying to people. Yeah.
But sorry, Ruben, is there a plan for what we have to do on testing?
We don't have a plan because we have separate issues. It's already planned in separate issues, like for HA, for like the stuff we are doing with kind is like one issue, and another issue is the like testing of the depths and RPM artifacts. That's like a separate priority even.
Okay, it would be great if there is a tracking issue somewhere, because it's difficult to follow.
I mean, we already have tracking issues for these separate items, but we don't have a combining issue about the test aspect of them. I don't think we should create one.
Okay. Tim, sorry, one last question. Do you think it is possible to get Matt Moyer have a look at the cap about the certificate moving, or some other expert in security?
I mean, we should probably ask Jordan directly, or I'm not sure if Matt is going to have the time, but we should probably ask Tim O'Clair or Jordan Legit to like ping them on Slack and, hey guys, if you have the time, please have a look at this. And you're on mute, Tim.
I'd recommend Jordan. Jordan will respond much faster. Yeah, just go with Jordan, and I'll try to loop in Matt.
Thank you. I think we are done.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording. One question, Tim, where should I upload it? That's the question.
Send me a GCS, just put it on a Google share somewhere, and I'll upload it to YouTube.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy.
Bye.